On this episode of Textbook, we're joined by Joseph Pearson, Executive Director for Auxiliary Enterprises at Central Washington University. Joseph leads a diverse auxiliary organization that includes dining and catering services, Wildcat Shop Campus Store, Early Childhood Learning Center, Wildcat Printing, Testing Center, Wildcat Farm, Central Access producing alternate format and accessible course materials, Campus Card Office, University Ticketing System, and the Campus Beverage and Vending Contract. He brings more than 25 years of experience in higher education with a focus on student development, experiential learning, and building auxiliary operations that are both mission-driven and financially sustainable. At Central Washington, he's been instrumental in several major initiatives, including the development of a large-scale residential dining program and the creation of the Wildcat Farm, a multi-acre, hyper-local agricultural operation that supports dining services, student learning, and campus efforts around sustainability and food access. Joseph is also deeply engaged in the broader auxiliary services community. He currently serves as the president of the NACIS West region and holds the Certified Auxiliary Services Professional designation. As always, the views shared here are those of the host and our guest, and not necessarily those of any current or former employer. Let's get into it with Joseph. Hi, Dr. Mike. How's it going this morning?
What's up, Dr. Andy? It's so good to see you again.
It's great to see you. You know what I'm excited for today? I think this is our second episode in a row where we're talking to a auxiliary services professional that has a portfolio of wonderful services that we get to dive into. I know we love to talk about the textbooks and course materials side of things, but it's also fun to get to talk to people that have some very interesting operations going on their campus.
For sure. I'm really excited. This is so much fun to learn new things. I don't know a ton about auxiliary services. I've lived in the bookstore lane my whole life. We've tried to celebrate the bookstore because that's, where I started. Like we said in the beginning of creating this podcast, is that in auxiliary services, there are so many things that are going on, so many amazing people thinking of creative ways to do stuff, and really just having the opportunity to celebrate that is so exciting. So I'm ready to get going on this one.
I have a really interesting and amazing person to introduce you to today. We have Joseph Pearson here.
What?
From Central Washington University.
That is so exciting. I have only been to Washington one time, actually a couple, Seattle. That's the only place I've ever been in Washington. So I'm super excited to have Joseph on the show today.
Well, Central Washington's a little different than Seattle. I've had the opportunity to be in Central Washington. I absolutely love the area. And hopefully Joseph will tell us a little about Central Washington at some point. But Joseph, for those that may not know you, can you give us a brief introduction of your background? And can you share a little about your path to the auxiliary services world?
Yeah, great. It's great to be with you, Mike and Andy. Great to have this opportunity to chat. Wow, background. So you were talking a little bit about all the many things that auxiliaries do, and I like to think it's really about the student experience. It's really everything we do is really focused on the student experience. I like to think that my background in auxiliary services began when I was a student at Boise State University. I was like the super involved student that did everything. I was an officer in an organization, started an organization, was in Greek life, student government, all the fun things. And I never thought this would be a profession. Never crossed my mind. I was a political science major. And then when I kind of landed into the profession, this is my fourth institution. I've been at 4 different institutions across the country. And I began my career in student services and student engagement, leadership development, and then slowly went into student unions. I became a director of a student union, campus recreation. And then through that experience, I also acquired self-operated dining and bookstore services. And then now here at Central Washington University, I have a large portfolio of many, I call them mini businesses. They're not so many, I guess, but businesses that are very different and that serve a different purpose. And it's been a great journey. I've been in higher education for over 25 years, and it's gone by pretty quick. I've had many experiences, have been able to touch, hopefully leave an impact on students. That's kind of my underlying purpose of why I do what I do. What impact have I left through my decisions, through my actions on students, and hopefully their future hopefully they've had a better experience because I was here. So that's really about like kind of my motivating factor of like why I do what I do, and I think many people share that as well. It's like it's really how do we what's my impact? What's my what's my legacy? What have I done to leave a positive impression on students and on the world really? So,
I feel like we say this every single episode, so I think maybe after this one we don't have to say it anymore. But it's so cool to hear stories like yours where you started, in college, right? Like you started, in student services and, have stayed there. I think it is so cool because as students, we get to see the institution from another side. And then as we become campus professionals, it keeps us grounded. And why are we doing this? What's the point of this? How can we think about our jobs and maybe change our experience, right? Maybe something you had when you were in school, it wasn't great. And you're like, if I ever get in this opportunity, I'm going to do this. So that's, it's pretty interesting. And what Andy said to start is I've only been to Seattle. I've really been anywhere else. So can you kind of give us a little idea of where Central Washington is and, kind of what your student population or what your area is like?
yeah, a great question. So Central Washington University is in Ellensburg, Washington. It's really Central Washington. It's right in the middle of the state. If you're familiar with the freeways, I-90 goes right through Washington, and we're right in the middle. I like to tell everyone we're about 2.5 hours from downtown Seattle and about 3 hours from Spokane. So either way, east, west, we're right in the middle. North, south, we're right in the middle. One of the things that is really appealing to me is that we're surrounded by mountains. I'm in a valley. It's a beautiful valley. We're mostly rural, agricultural, a lot of hay. Fun fact, Ellensburg, Washington is the highest Timothy hay exporter in the world. So we grow a lot of grasses and hay in this area, a lot of cattle. So that's really the prime agricultural products here in my area. And then just a little further south, we have Yakima hops. There's hops fields everywhere, fruit, a lot of fruit in Central Washington area. So it's a beautiful place. I'm just a couple hours to the coast, an hour less up into the mountains, rivers and lakes around, and it's just an absolutely gorgeous place. I grew up in Idaho, which is also a beautiful state. Had no idea, and I've been to Seattle, right? That was like my Washington experience. And so when moving here, I just amazed at the beauty. Like I can go a couple hours, I'm in the rainforest in the sound area or in the water or close to the ocean. Again, it's just absolutely gorgeous. And then if I want, I can get this little high mountain desert area too. So dryland farming in the eastern end of Washington. So a lot of diverse places here. Central Washington University, we call ourselves an access school. We typically, our students come from Washington State, from both west and east sides. We are probably I don't remember the statistics, but we have a lot of first gen students. So a lot of our students come from backgrounds where they may not have thought about going to college or may not have succeeded in their high school years to get into something like University of Washington or a tier one institution. One of the things I really like about what we do here at our institution, being an access school, a small regional, is that we really give hope and opportunity for students that again come from backgrounds where they may be the first one in any of their families to go to school and to have a bright future. It's really cool to see, and our students are again. I've been to 4 different institutions, all over the country. The students here are very humble. They're appreciative of what we do for the most part, and they're just kind of down to earth, which is really really fun to see the impact that we can make.
So one of the things you mentioned was the agricultural side of the area that you're in, but my understanding is Central Washington is doing some really unique work on bringing local produce to your dining program. I hear you have a farm. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, one of my 8 areas of responsibility is a farm, and the cool thing about I love talking about the farm. So, one of the things that I have always had a vision for is to be able to have that full cycle, food cycle on a campus. I've seen some examples, University of Vermont and some other places across the country that have had farms. We're not the only campus that has a farm, but I think we're pretty unique in how we've set it up. A lot of other institutions have farms that are part of their ag mission or their academic departments. Our vision of the farm was to create a space where we would produce food hyper local food using organic principles. Everything is 100% organic. We don't use pesticides or fertilizers. It's all natural. Everything's natural. But the food we produce was primarily intended to be used in our dining services. And so we had this grand vision of how can we make this happen? We have some space. Let's explore it. I've been here for almost 10 years. So 10 years later, we have a fully functioning farm and 3 high hoop houses, high tunnels. We have 5 production fields. Number 6 is coming online this fall. We have an apiary with the bees, and we have a food forest. We have a community garden as part of our farm as well. And then we're working on the last piece of the puzzle is to get a composting. We're doing small scale composting currently, but our goal is to have a large scale composter on campus. And we're working with our sustainability folks to try to find some grant money to make that happen. And once that happens, I'll be able to realize that vision of having that full circle food cycle on our campus where we're growing the food, and waste that is produced will come back to the farm, and we'll put it back into the soil, which grows the food. So we're super excited about what we're doing at the farm. A lot of cool things that we're able to do with the farm. Campus is pretty big on sustainability, as many other institutions have found out that a lot of students who want to do projects that are sustainable, they want to do highly visible things, and the farm is like a target. And we also call ourselves an outdoor classroom, where we bring people to our area and show, here's how food is grown and harvested, and here's where some of your food comes from. This is how you grow. And then we do a lot of experiments. So we have students and faculty doing some research on our farm. So this has been the vision all along of how we're creating this space where not only are we growing food that's hyper local and featured in our dining services, but also it's a space for learning. It's a space for community. It's open. So we want people to come get a plot in our community garden and grow your own food. We have events out at our farm that build community, and we get volunteers to come out and work on the farm. So I think it's a really cool vision of what we've created, and it's really central. One of the cool things about it is the way we've set it up. It's part of Auxiliary Enterprises, so our auxiliary family, and so it's the key focus is on that food production for our dining. So that's been a really big opportunity for us.
One thing I wanted to ask you, you touched on it briefly. You said that some students or some faculty are doing experiments. What role do students have in the farm across all areas of it? You mentioned a lot of different things you have going on, but where do students come in? Or can you give us, maybe more in depth or some more detail on where students fit into the entire life cycle or ecosystem, around the farm?
Yeah, great question. So I have 2 full-time staff that manage the farm. Everyone else is either student employees or student volunteers. Those student employees are getting, they're not just weeding. They're out. They actually have the way we have it set up. Our farm manager is really, really good about setting things up. Each of the students has like an expertise area. So we may have one. In our area, we have to do a lot of irrigation because we're at high mountain desert. And so we're in the rain shadow of the Cascades. So we have to irrigate in order to grow anything. And so we have a student who's in charge of the irrigation. We have a student that is in charge of our food forest. We have a student it's not the only thing they do, but it's their primary responsibility. And some of our production fields, it's potatoes. They're the expert in there. We have someone that manages the apiary, the bees. And so our student employees are getting some hands-on experience as part of their employment with us. But then we also get volunteers. We have several, we call them gather and grow events. And so we used to just say, oh, come volunteer at the farm, but that didn't generate a lot of interest. But now we call them gather and grow. We always usually have some type of educational component as part of that volunteer piece. And a lot of times volunteers are coming out where they're prepping the fields for growing. And so we get groups of students that are coming out to volunteer. They're also learning how to plant, how to grow, how to harvest in the fall. We use students to basically run our program. We have a student that's in charge of our community garden. That student employee reaches out to community members who want to have a plot in our garden. Our students they're getting paid, but they're also learning great skills, leadership skills. They're learning how to manage an area. So we truly think, and this is not just our farm, but in my belief in auxiliaries is we don't just employ students, we teach them outside the classroom skills so that they can be successful wherever they go. And so this is just another opportunity for our students. And then we're very involved with our environmental studies and other sustainable, like our farm manager sits on our sustainability council. We're very much ingrained and involved in our sustainability culture on campus. And because of that, a lot of our students that are not necessarily connected with the farm, but they're in a class that is doing some type of project or learning about sustainability and anything surrounding it. A lot of times they're required to do projects or research, and we're there to help them. So we want to make sure that we're setting up our students to be successful, to do some research, do some study, to implement a project. And so there's a really big connection with our students, whoever is involved. And again, we're typically the target when the student wants to do a project. Well, I want to research local growing something. So we're okay. Let's come at the farm. We have some space for you. Let's do it.
Given the role that agriculture plays in the community, do you have local farmers or companies that help? Whether you're creating like a pipeline for them or contributing to the funding necessary to continue the operation, or are you developing those partnerships with the area because it's so highly agricultural?
Yeah, great question. Those are things that we aspire to do. We haven't been successful yet in making those connections. Part of it is because we don't have an agricultural program at the campus because we're not the land grant school. That's Washington State University. They do have an extension office here. We do try to work with them as much as possible. But because we don't have a natural tie-in with an agricultural program, it makes that one a little more challenging. We've talked about ways that we could reach out to some of the industry partners, but growing hay takes a lot of space. We have 6 acres, and then we're just not going to put any cattle on our farm. So we are having chickens this spring, so that's going to be fun, a new addition. We do have a craft brew program on our campus. We talked about potentially growing hops or barley just for study. That's just, again, there's some logistical challenges there. So we just haven't made that connection yet of where that makes sense. So right now we're focusing on our primary mission is to grow local produce. We have Master Gardeners Association here in our area. We've partnered with them. They've come out and done some workshops at our farm and done some education for us. And so where it makes sense and where we can, we've made that connection. But that's we would love to be able to have that pipeline where we're supporting the local agricultural area. There just really isn't because it's I call it monoculture because there's only a couple ag industries here. It's really difficult for us to do that. One of the challenges also that we've discovered, and things grow well here, there really isn't a community supported agriculture program, a CSA program here in this area. There's a lot of them in the Seattle area on the west side of the mountains, but here there's not. And so we've actually created that as well. We have a CSA. It's a program where we actually have to have a lottery because there's so much interest in it. And so I think we have 10 shares, 10 to 15, depending on the type of season. But we have more demand than we have supply. And so that's been great. We want to grow that program. I want to grow the CSA program. So we're trying to fill a niche where the community doesn't have that. Also with our composting efforts, our current area doesn't do food waste composting. Their county does some yard waste and other green waste composting, but not food waste. That was one of the things for me is like, well, we're a university, let's take the lead and leading the community in that area. And so I have this other grand vision of being able to, get a big enough unit where we can take our own waste, and then potentially if there's places in town in our area that want us to pick up their food waste, and we'll charge them a monthly fee or whatever and make some revenue there. So,
That's cool.
yeah, so there's opportunities that we just haven't realized yet that a lot that are in the plans and in the vision.
Sounds like a really interesting program. There has to have been a few challenges to getting this set up. Can you give us one or two of the challenges that you experienced with this?
Yeah, there've been a lot. So when we first had the idea, scouting the location, there was a space that wasn't really being used, and so we were okay. Let's do this, and there's at every institution there's a process to do anything, and so what we found was that the space that we identified was some other people had other plans for that space that were never articulated. So there was a heavy opposition to what we were trying to do, and our facilities folks didn't like the idea, and so there was an uphill battle of trying to make it happen. But once we had a chance to talk about our vision for the future and what we're trying to do, I think we were able to sway. Well, we had it, we got it. So I had the right people in my corner. We had to play a little politics, and I had to make sure the president was supportive first before we went on the road. So we were able to make that happen. And so that was a big hurdle, was just to be able to articulate the need and opportunity and vision for what we were trying to create. Some of the other challenges, we're in an area that we receive high winds constantly in the spring. Like, this is a very windy place, coming right off the mountains, and it's cold, and it's constant. And if they have things staked down, it's gonna go to the next county. Our high tunnels, we're done very well. We looked at models like when we were trying to decide what to do. We also have a short growing season because we get a lot of snow and cold in the winter. So the season is limited, and so we want to be able to extend our growing season as much as possible with the high tunnels. And so we looked at models at University of Michigan, or a couple institutions in Michigan, Montana State, and some other schools that are in the kind of northern latitudes that have done things like this. We were looking at their models. The wind was a factor in how we designed them, and it continues to be a challenge to keep plastic on a high tunnel in high winds. And then water. Water is always an issue. I think a couple of seasons ago, our irrigation pumps failed, and so they had to do hand water. It was just not ideal. So in our area, without water, the stuff doesn't grow. We just have to have it. So when a pump fails, that's a bad thing. The weather and the climate is always a challenge in our area. But we've been able to persevere and make best of what we have. And maybe one season was not so great because we didn't have the water all season. But last season we had our record. We had over 20,000 pounds of produce produced on the farm. So, and our goal this year is 30. So we're really excited. And again, a lot of that's dependent on if we have a late hard frost in May, once everything is growing. That happens here in this area. We can get snow in April. So we always have to be really careful about what we're doing and when, and the weather has a big impact. Those are some of the challenges that we've seen on the farm.
You started off as saying, your goal was to have that whole food life cycle on campus, and you want to be able to provide your dining services with food. Can you talk to us a little bit about your dining services? Are there some cool things that you're doing there besides, obviously supplying the produce, but any cool innovations or things you're like, man, I haven't really heard a lot of people doing this, or hey, this is really cool, I think more people should do this?
Yeah, we won a couple of awards from our dining program. We are a self-op program, and that gives us the flexibility to play a little bit. We're able to secure a chef from the Four Seasons. Yeah,
That's cool.
he got tired of the Seattle life and the 60, 70-hour weeks. So we convinced him to come join us out here. Now he's got 20 acres and grows his own food. He's very talented, and we created a couple concepts for us. One is our vegan vegetarian options, and instead of calling it that, it's called Fresh Bar, and it's really, the marketing is really highlighting the food. It's plant forward. You can add a protein, and the proteins are actually, we have halal chicken, fresh natural salmon, and then tofu or other vegan proteins. You can add. Everything we do there is all plant forward. It's featuring a lot of our produce that we grow on the farm. So that's kind of our direct conduit to what we're growing on the farm. And so it's been a great concept, and we won awards for it. And they do fresh juices by using like beets grown on the farm, things like that. So it's really exciting to see kind of what we've been able to do with the partnership with our dining program. And because our farm is part of the family, the auxiliaries, the goal there is really how do we better integrate each other. And so that's been a great thing. We are also part of the Menus Have Changed Undergraduate Research Coalition, MCURC. I don't remember what it all stands for, but it's really looking at plant forward, changing our menus and how we market and what we provide for our students to make it more healthy, and focusing on sustainability efforts. So we're really partnering with them. We were doing a study last year, so we're trying to get the results about how we've changed just by menu placement. Instead of having like at our grill option, instead of having like you have a burger, but then you can substitute it with something else, with a vegetarian or vegan option. We just feature that as a primary option. So it's not just a secondary thought. So we're trying to rethink how we're providing that plant forward better choices for them. We know we're living reality. We know we're going to sell chicken strips and a Panda Express orange chicken. That's what we sell all day long. But for those who are interested in exploring and doing other things, we want to make sure that we're featuring our, plant forward things, and changing the way we're marketing, and changing the way we don't call things healthy, because that's a trigger word for it's not good. And then also the other piece I think that we'll be able to do with our dining program is that we're moved to more, everything is made fresh in small batches. And so in a lot of dining operations, large batches, something's brought in frozen and reheated. We just don't. Our chef does not like that. So the food quality is a value for what we're trying to do. And so everything that we do, again, small batches, most everything is done in-house, prepped and prepared and served in-house. So those are some of the cool things I think we're doing in our dining program. There probably are others that I not articulated, but we're just really excited about the opportunities that we have here at our campus, and the support that we've been given to make some changes and do some positive things for our students. We constantly are assessing, asking our students, how is your experience, and what can we provide, and what are the things can we do to enhance your experience. This fall, we're going to be rolling out a sushi concept on our campus, which we haven't done for ever. And so we're partnering with some experts to come in and do that for us. And so our students are super excited to have a sushi concept.
So you were talking about the plant forward menus, and I know that there's been a lot of talk about that in the industry lately. There's some people doing some great work towards that end. But as I've been talking to different people have various motivations for getting into that space. Some people are talking about, well, it's an affordability issue because, the plant-based proteins are cheap, or looking like they're going to be cheaper than the meat-based proteins. I've heard people talk about it as an accessibility issue because, the people that have religious beliefs or dietary restrictions, it's a way to allow them access to your campus because otherwise, they're having trouble finding food. And so the college experience isn't as beneficial for them. There's a health aspect to it. There's a list of them. And when you talk to different people, they're referencing different ones. What would you say your main motivation for being in that plant forward space is? And also for being a leader in that kind of space, because I know that you're working on some initiatives that are probably going to affect the whole industry.
Yeah, great question. I would say all of them. All the reasons that you brought up, really, when you think about food, one of the things about food is it's an opportunity for gathering, for community building, um, for nourishment. Really, we know food insecurity is a big deal on many campuses as well. If a student's hungry, they're not going to learn, they're not going to grow. So I would say the biggest motivation and factor for us is really to address, to help in our sustainability efforts. We know that we, as food service providers, we have a huge impact, and it's in the billions of dollars of impact on what we're doing. And so what can we do to help again, as I've started in the beginning of this conversation, it's about impact, right? Right. What can I do to help, or what kind of positive impact can we leave? And I think one of the things that we strive to do on our campus is to be a leader in that area of how can we help impact the climate change efforts, sustainability, social and environmental sustainability efforts. And one of the ways is to help advance plant forward menus. Now, I'm a realist, and I think we'll never get to a point where we're just doing plant food. Nor do I. I'm a carnivore, omnivore. I wouldn't like that personally, but I think there's things that we can do, and what we can do, we should do. And so I think that having opportunities to partner with folks around the country that are in this space, who are experts, and to kind of just help us rethink how we approach food production, how we serve, if it's delicious and nutritious and sustainable, it's a win-win, right? It's a win-win-win. And I think we can do that. And again, there are experts in the field that are working on these efforts, developing menus, developing processes of how to procure plant-based items. It doesn't have to be the only thing we're offering, but we can be more thoughtful and mindful about the choices we make and in how we're presenting our food. And so really that motivation is really to, I guess, what's our impact on the world, the community, the climate, the communities that we live in, and those are our motivational factors of why we're interested in doing a plant forward menu, why we're interested in changing how we think about food, why we're interested in just kind of rethinking what we're doing in our dining operation. And so far, I think what we're doing is positive. There's a lot more we could be doing, and we will. But I think making those first steps and being an advocate for change is important.
In our Earth Day themed episode, we talked to Will Crawford, who's an ESG director for a bookstore lease operator, and we talked about data and recognizing the carbon footprint of print versus digital books. Have you done any data analysis over like what a carbon footprint would look like or reducing the carbon footprint would look like moving to that plant forward philosophy or approach?
Great question. We're on that path. There's a couple partners that we have been talking to that provide that service. What I've seen is they're using AI to assist that process where you can plug in your menus and your items, and you can get that information, the data to show, okay, this particular brand or this particular food product has this score or this or how there's several metrics that you can receive. Our biggest effort right now that we get the data for is we're really heavily emphasizing local connections and local products. And so we push a lot on our providers to provide local produce, local proteins, local anything we can get. Our eggs come from a local family farm in Washington. We pay a little more, but that's a value that we've chosen to make. And our milk comes from a local family small dairy, and so that's been a choice that we've made. And so it doesn't last as long on the shelf, because it's not ultra processed, but it's better for you. It's local, and we go through enough volume where we don't have to worry about the shelf stability. So there's things that we're doing, and we're gathering the data as we're moving. I think there's an opportunity for us to, like you said, Mike, I think, and I tried to inform our staff whenever we're making decisions to gather the data and let's analyze the data and let's make sure that it's showing that there's an impact, because we could make actions, and we do sometimes. We just act because we think it feels good. But where's the data on that? My team probably gets tired of me asking, okay, that's a great story, but where's the data to back up what you're saying? And so they know now that I'm going to ask that question. And so I think as we're moving forward with our plant forward efforts and gathering that data, it's going to just make us even better. So I mentioned that study we're doing on our marketing. Part of the study is that we're gathering the data on sales. So how has it impacted the sale by changing the way we're putting things on the menu? And that's part of that study. We're going to gather the data, and then we're going to do an analysis and say, okay, did it make an impact? And if so, then what was that impact? And so I think, again, without having that data to inform our decisions, we're just doing things that feel good, which is not, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if we're talking about dollars and cents, which we are, it's really important to have the data to back up, to be able to say, this is why we're doing this. This is why we made this decision. And the data is backing us up to show that there is an impact.
So when you get that data, do you plan on doing a study, like keeping it in-house, or do you plan on, doing that full study, looking at what, the impact on your revenue is, and then sharing it with, either some sort of industry organization that you're part of, or at a conference, or into the world to share? You can do this and you can also make money, right? Sustainability is great, but we know in this world that if it's not generating revenue, it's not something that people are going to buy into. But if you can prove, or you can demonstrate that these sustainability efforts are positively impacting our bottom line, and that is huge to put into the world. So do you have any plans to share with the rest of the world, or is this just going to be something you keep in-house?
We would definitely want to share, especially if our findings are positive.
If they're not, just bury it. Just bury it. It's fine.
No, and let's be real. At the end of the day, we have to cover our costs. We have to pay the bills, turn on the lights. And if what we're doing isn't doing that, then we have to make other decisions. And so that is important. The farm does not cover its costs. And so there's a subsidy there. And so that's a choice we've made to do that, to have that as an expense, because we value the impact. But then I get asked the questions, well, what is that impact? Where's the data? How much are you producing? How much is being used in dining? How much is going to we give access to local food banks? Like, where is that data? And so we have to gather all that data to be able to tell that story. I would love for us to be able to, once we get the data and the analysis, even if it's a negative, we should probably share that data and that story. Our dining folks are heavily involved in the NACFS, the Food Service Association, and so they'll either do it there or NACS, the auxiliary services, or wherever we can. I think it's important for us to tell the story once we get all the data and we understand what our impact has been and is. But you're right, though. Yeah, if it doesn't turn out to be a good decision, we may need to question our assumptions, question why we're doing it. And at the end of the day, Mike, if we do have to pay the bills, but really it's about impact as well. Like, okay, so we know that it may be more expensive to make a decision. Sustainable packaging, for instance, that costs more. Is it a value of ours? Yes. Are we okay with the cost that value has attached to it? Yes, because of the impact. And so, but then we can also ask those questions, like you said, where's the data on the impact? Where's this? A lot of our partners, I think it's also partnering with the industry that is changing as well. And so, the industry should be able to give us some of that data on sustainable practices for where their products are coming from. They should be able to give us that. And I think it's becoming more and more regular, because people like us are asking for it. We're asking for the data. We're asking for what is your environmental impact of this product, and what does that mean? And so I think, I would love to be able to share the story once we have a story to share.
Yeah, that'd be really neat to see how how that plays out, good or bad, or positive or negative. Right? If you're in the black or you're in the red, just getting that message out. Because the best part about doing things like that is someone may have another idea. If someone can see what you're doing, they may be like, Joseph, you could totally turn this around if X, and if X is within your ability or whatever, then you could potentially change, right? And the more information we share about the transformative things that we're doing, the higher the likelihood that someone else is going to hear it and say, oh, I had that same idea, or we're doing this on our campus, but this is why it's working. So just getting that out there, I think, is going to be so cool when you finally get it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things that I'm not shy about sharing, I built my career on the backs of other people's ideas in higher education, right? I go to conferences and I go to other schools and talk to colleagues who are doing some really cool things. And I'm like, hey, that looks really interesting. I'm interested in that. Give me more information. I'm going to implement a program like that on my campus, but then I'm going to tweak it a little bit. I'm going to make an incremental change here or there and make it our own. But yeah, I am not I'm not the smartest man in the room for sure. But I do know a good thing when I see it, and when I see the impact of other people's excellent work and ideas, and those are some of the things that get me excited. And I say, well, let's explore this idea and see what we can do in our campus.
So we've been talking a lot about initiatives, revenue generation. Are you getting clear guidance from your administration on what they want to see? Do they want to see that mission-driven program, or are they looking for you to be bringing in the revenue, or are you just having to guess what they want?
Well, great question. I think it really depends on the day. So as a small regional institution, and I'm not alone, we struggle with enrollment, and we have struggled since the pandemic. In 2019, we had a peak of over 11,000 students. We currently have a little over 8,000 students. So significant enrollment loss. And so what does that impact? Well, it impacted a lot. It impacts a lot of things, but primarily for our auxiliary units that have debt service, like our housing. That's a big impact. We have buildings we were talking about shuttering them and not bringing them back online, and there's still a cost, right? So that pressure, the financial pressure, is real, and I'm feeling it constantly. I've not been given a specific figure, but there is a campus contribution that is expected. The way our system is set up, we call it an administrative fee. I call it the campus tax, but we pay significant dollars to the campus, and then we also fund other operations that we receive services for. So our operations are a significant part of the financial impact of the campus, of the institution. And so being able to be financially viable and bringing revenue to the bottom line, increased revenue, and in fact, positive net revenue is the expectation, so that we can use those dollars for capital, right? So we call ourselves, we call it the system, I call it the family. All of our self-operated units and fee-funded units together, we have this reserve account that we can use for replacing roofs, windows, floors, redoing things. And so the last several years have been a struggle because we have probably a 60 to $80 million backlog of deferred maintenance, which again, I'm not alone. I know I'm not alone in that conversation. How do we pay for a boiler that goes down? And a lot of the stuff we kind of hope each year that something doesn't break because we don't have the money to replace it when it needs to be replaced. Those conversations all put a lot of pressure on the bottom line for, okay, are we charging enough for our services? Are we reducing our labor? As an operator, those of you who are operators know that you can control only a few things. You can control your labor costs. You somewhat can control your food costs, and then cost of goods, your goods and services. You can make some choices there. So not a lot of opportunities to make, and you can change your pricing structure. So there's pressure on all those. And so you have to balance. It's a balance in act. To answer your question, Andy, I don't get a specific dollar figure to say, Joseph, you need to do this. But we definitely, at the very least, a lot of my operations are cost recovery operations. You got to cover your costs. So if you have to reduce your labor or increase your rates or whatever you have to do, cover your costs. Yeah. And not all of them are successful every year. But then we have others that are like the bookstore and our dining. Like you have to expect it to bring revenue to the table.
All of those decisions that you're making have some impact on students. So you reduce your labor. The first labor that goes is usually your students. If you change your pricing, the students are paying more. And so it's kind of get in these no-win situations where, you're expected to have full cost recovery or make money, but you also have to weigh how that impacts your students. And then all the downflow things of, well, if your students can't afford to go to college, your enrollment goes down and those kinds of things. So, like all auxiliary professionals, you're in that very interesting balancing act of, yeah, we need to make revenue. Yeah, we have mission things. Yeah, we need to support enrollment. And I think you probably very nicely are trying to dance around how hard that is. But I think as an auxiliary service professional, I think we all struggle with that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. There's a reason why I'm bald. 25 years of struggle does that to a person. But you talked about this, like the student experience, and I try to. It kind of goes back to when we first started. My personal journey began because of my student experience. And that really informs, I try to make it inform every decision we make, is what's the impact to students? And that is foremost in our conversations. And so I hope that I think for the most part, my colleagues across the profession are in that same boat. It's like, what is the impact to students? When we're talking about shutting down an operation, a dining operation, the first question is not, what's the revenue implication? Although that's important, it's what's the impact to students. So if we make this decision, what is the impact? We had a chance to shutter catering. That would save us, to be honest, over $250,000 because it's a loss. It's a loss. It's a loser. We're not making money in catering. So, but we are providing a service to our campus. We're providing a service to the student. What would our local community, I don't think, can pick up the slack for us not being there and providing that service. So our challenge then is, okay, now that impact financially, if you're looking at just the dollars, looks great on paper. It brings us, we could bring an extra $250,000 to the bottom line. But what is the impact? And so we have to ask that, what's the value? So you said it's a balance. And so we have to make those decisions all the time about balancing. Okay, we're here to provide, and we also have to balance it with no margin. There's no mission. So we may have a mission to provide these services, to have the student experience and to give educational opportunities. But if we don't have a margin to do that, there's no mission. So again, that balancing act is difficult at times. Like, okay, how do we make this work? In the state of Washington, our labor cost is huge. Our minimum wage is $17.50 an hour. And that's starting. We don't pay a lot. We pay We pay a lot more sometimes for that. That's just labor cost, and then add all the other costs that we get. That is a constant struggle, Andy. Glad you brought that up, but yeah, it is a daily, sometimes daily conversation about how do we make that balance and make those difficult decisions. Sometimes I've had to have conversations with staff about, oh, if we can't make this work, we may have to shut this down, right? And that's a huge impact to. I'm talking about childcare. So childcare super expensive and high demand, but at some point it gets too expensive for people. So how do we balance that? And can we continue to make it work? So these are all conversations that I get to have, and I'm sure my colleagues across the country are having, and they're not fun, but but they're important. I'm glad. Thank you for acknowledging the difficulty, because yes, living in it.
Yeah. So, Joseph, we've had a great conversation today, and I continue to look at your virtual, it's not a virtual background, it's your actual background. And for those that are listening on Spotify or something, they're not going to see this amazing background there. But if you're on YouTube, you can see it. And can you just tell us about your background behind you? And, I mean, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So it is real. I have over 135 pennants up on my wall in my office.
Wow.
And what that represents is all the institutions that I have visited and toured since I began my career 25 years ago.
That's
So when
cool.
I go to conferences, when I go actually sometimes family vacations, to the chagrin of my family sometimes, I visit a campus if I'm in that local area. And so why do I do it? Well, I love, I began my career in student unions. And so it's typically I go to a student union, sometimes campus rec, sometimes if I have time, I'll tour the campus. Really, I call this my perspective wall. And so what it represents is an opportunity to get ideas, to gather ideas across the country about all the cool things that are happening on college campuses. And it's like an accumulation of not data but experiences that I can use to inform what I can bring to my own campus. And so I love what I do. I love being in higher education. I think the impact that we as professionals can make is huge, and this is just a representation of that impact. Again, I hope, and I have many more years to go. I hope it grows. But again, 135 campuses I've visited in my career so far, and have seen some wonderful things. Each one has a story to tell. But it's been a great journey for me to be able to again have that. What's that impact? And so that's the story of the pendants.
It's really neat to see that. And the fact that they each represent some place that you've been. I know people like you enough that they'd be sending you pendants, and you'd probably have 200, 300 if you allowed people just to send them to you, but you actually have to go to the campus.
Yeah, I have to remind the friends, and because you're right. I always get offers. I'm like, well, thank you. You're gracious and kind, but I have to go in a closet until I get to your campus.
Yeah. So at some point you have to visit my campus because I don't think it's up on the wall, and I want to make
Yet.
sure that you have one up there. It was really great talking to you today, and I look forward to a future conversation where we can dive into some more things. You're just a wealth of information, and it really, really means a lot that you came out and talked to us. So
Awesome. Well, thank
thank
you,
you.
Andy and Mike, and I appreciate the opportunity to tell my story. I love to tell the stories. So I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for your friendship and being a wonderful colleague over the many years that we've known each other, and look forward to continued conversations.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Textbook. If something you heard today stays with you, take it back to your own campus and feel free to share it with a colleague or friend. We'll see you next time.